Hi, everybody. My name is Keith Freeze. And a couple weeks ago, I did a video about the WWE and where I think that they're at right now as a company. And I think it's a good product. But these are just some of my ideas about what I would do if I had a hand in the in ring product. So to start, I'm going to say no punching. I understand, for a guy like Roman Reigns, where his finisher is the Superman punch, or when AJ Styles does the flying elbow, that's kind of a punch. I understand those things. Like, yeah, I'll be honest with you, they're not very believable because they just don't get laid in as a real punch. Um, as an example of what I'm saying is believable is that infamous time when Brock Lesnar for real punched Braun Strowman and it elicited a actual reaction from Braun Strowman of getting punched. Like, it's those moments that stick in the pro wrestling fan's mind as what is, real or believable or whatever versus all that other stuff. And the whole point of pro wrestling is there's supposed to be the suspension of disbelief. So what I'm saying is that like a guy getting punched 10, 15, 20 times in a match and he's not really selling it like he got punched, it just doesn't look good, number one. And I've heard Al Snow say something about like he was teaching a class about pro wrestling or guys coming into the business and stuff, and he was saying that punching is the fakest looking thing that you can do in the ring, and it really is. It doesn't look good, and I just would almost just say no more punching unless it's some kind of finisher. No more punching. But that leads me to my next point, which is that finishers need to mean something again. I get why kicking out of a finisher is sort of this big moment because it's like, wow, he hit the Stone Cold Stunner and he couldn't even beat him with that. I understand that, but it needs to be saved for the most rarest of occasions. And I would say that it was more of independent wrestling that really put this whole idea of kicking out of finishers on the map. And it became so overdone that it happens all the time now that a finisher is not a finisher, and therefore like something else has to happen. And to that point, I mean, this isn't about a finisher necessarily, but it's like that whole thing of I've heard people say like, a guy goes through a table. I think Kevin Nash said this. It's like a guy goes through a table, he gets set on fire, he gets hit in the head with a chair, but he loses because some fan handed like a toy Tyrannosaurus Rex to a guy and he hit him over the head, and it's like 1, 2, 3. Like, I guess the bigger point that Kevin was trying to say, and I'm not trying to speak for him, but I know what he's saying, which is that like, why wasn't the end of the match when the guy went through a table when you did a 450 off the top of a ladder? Like, that is a finish. Just because like the 450 is not necessarily the guy's finisher. Let's say the guy's finisher is a super kick or something, right? It's like you just did a big aerial move to a person where you guys both crashed through a table, and in theory, the other guy took most of the impact. 1, 2, 3, that's a finish. Like, don't overthink finishes. This whole idea of kicking out of finishers and stuff is kind of whatever. It loses the plot every time you do it, and it's supposed to be meant for those big moments. Like, if The Undertaker's winning streak, as an example, was still intact at WrestleMania, and he's legitimately like down and out for the count, and it's one, like, he takes maybe a sweet chin music, or he takes a Stone Cold Stunner or people's elbow, whatever. Okay, he's down for the count, 1, 2, kick out, and it's like the streak is still alive. It has to be something that really there's a bigger thing on the line that has to be happening with that reason for kicking out. Like, you kicking out of somebody's finisher because you're working an indie show at Hammerstein Ballroom doesn't mean shit. Like, I'm not trying to be an a-hole, but it just really doesn't mean anything. There has to be bigger stakes on the line, right? Okay, so anyway, there's that. Now, I did mention Kevin Nash, and that brings me to my next point, which is that 6 moves per wrestler is actually a good thing. There was like this whole narrative against Kevin Nash that he only had 6 moves. I think he said that it was Jim Cornette who said it, and I think Jim Cornette himself backed it up. And I'm not trying to shit on anybody by making this comment. I'm just trying to say that the 6 moves is actually a good thing, but the whole thing against Kevin Nash was that he only has 6 moves, and that's a detriment, and how terrible of like a wrestler he was because he only had 6 moves. In my opinion, a wrestler should only have 6 moves. Like, you should have 6 moves that you automatically think of that wrestler doing. So in the case of Brock Lesnar, it's like, and that include his 6 moves includes a finisher. So let's say, he has the F5, he's got the German suplex, belly to belly, and then a combination of like maybe something within those, a power bomb. That's a Brock Lesnar move. Like, what I'm saying is if you really boil down each wrestler to 6 moves, including their finisher. So let's say like 4 moves, a signature move, and a finisher move. That's your 6 moves. That's what in my mind should be who you are as a wrestler. When I see you, I should be like, okay, I know that with Gunther, I'm going to get chops. You know what I mean? Like, that's what that should be. And there's nothing wrong with having 6 moves because in theory, like, that's what makes that character that character. Like, I shouldn't want to watch a match where I'm expecting somebody to be doing 10, 20, 30, whatever things because they can. I want to watch it because that's who they are as the character. It's in the same way that, like whatever, like if you're playing anything, any kind of game or whatever, it's like there's certain people that have certain things that they can do and they have limitations of things that they can't do. Just because you can do them, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should do them. And that might take away from what makes other guys able to do those things. So like as an example, if I have a match of AJ Styles versus the Big Show, it should be AJ Styles does aerial stuff and Big Show grounds and pounds with the choke slam, like that's kind of the whole whatever. You're supposed to have certain things that are good for your character to be doing. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next point because I think I made that point pretty well. But the next point is that there should be shorter matches. And when I say shorter matches, I mean matches that are like 3 to 4 minutes long. There's nothing wrong with having a match that's 3 to 4 minutes long. The whole point of why pro wrestling doesn't necessarily like 3 to 4 minute matches is because those are typically squash matches. But the whole thing about a squash match is that it's not necessarily about the length of time. It's about one wrestler completely dominating the other. And therefore, like, the match does last 3 to 4 minutes. Like, the 3 to 4 minutes is the byproduct of a guy getting literally squashed. And so that's why people don't typically like shorter matches. They want guys to go 10, 15, 20 minutes, particularly if it's a pay-per-view and particularly if it's a main event of a pay-per-view, which, by the way, I also understand because that's always been the guarantee that pro wrestling will have over mixed martial arts or boxing. Like if you order a pro wrestling pay-per-view, you know that the main event is going to give you 20 to 30 minutes of content. More times than not, because the example that I'm about to bring up did break that and actually was an exceptionally awesome short match. But there was that match at Survivor Series between Goldberg and Brock Lesnar, and that, in my opinion, is the best match that the WWE has put out in the last 10 years. Now, some of you guys might automatically discredit me and say, oh, you really think that Goldberg and Brock Lesnar, a 90-second match was the best match that WWE ever put together? Like, you're nuts, whatever. But it's really not. It's actually one of the best matches that WWE has ever put out because it stuck to the 6 moves per person mentality of things, which is Brock Lesnar comes out, he powers Goldberg into the corner, he gets in his own head thinking this will be a cakewalk, and Goldberg spear, double spear, jackhammer, we go home. That's it. That's the whole match, and it totally worked. I totally bought it. Goldberg getting that moment of catching Lesnar off guard, hitting a spear. Again, that's his signature move. That's an elevated move, hitting a second one. So now, like, in theory, that whole theory about like suspending disbelief, Brock Lesnar should be in pain in that world if he got hit by two signature moves right in a row, and then he's finished when Goldberg hits the jackhammer, which is his finisher. Like, it all makes sense if you suspend your disbelief. And that's why it is, in my opinion, the best match the WWE has had in the last 10 years. Because it's totally believable, and it was a short match. Who cares that it was 90 seconds? In fact, it being 90 seconds is exactly what that match should have been. So I'm saying that shorter matches need to happen more frequently. 3 to 4 minute matches. If you're getting guys down to having 6 moves, like, you know, I've thought about this. It's like AJ Styles versus Brock Lesnar, right? Like, because they battled at the Survivor Series the year after that one. But it's like all that match had to have been was AJ Styles charges, Brock Lesnar catches him and hits a belly-to-belly, second belly-to-belly suplex, maybe a German suplex. AJ Styles, like, you know, maybe gets to his feet, ducks a clothesline from Brock Lesnar and hits like a springboard off the ropes. Brock Lesnar catches him, German suplex, F5, we go home. That's it. That's as big as the match should be. And all I did was stuck to the 6 moves, and it's far more believable than them having to go 15, 20, 25 minutes. Now, I understand that you have to meet a certain requirement of like selling the pay-per-view and things have to whatever, but I'm talking about just like logic. Get back to like the logic of suspension of disbelief, because it does exist and it should be there. So there's that. And the last thing I will say is this is kind of maybe like a Bill Watts old school mentality of things, and maybe like this is not something that most pro wrestlers like to do or whatever, but don't go out of the ring. Like, keep the product in the ring. No more having like those mats at ringside. Like, okay, maybe have the mats for like aesthetic reasons, but bring the audience in tighter to the ring. Like, you know, the one thing that Dr. Jerry Buss did really well with the Lakers was he sold courtside seats. Like, your ringside seats, could you imagine if those were like a foot or two closer, or, you know, maybe even like 3 feet, 4 feet closer to the ring? Like, people would be like, whoa, like I'm this close to the, you know, like, so my point is like, keep the product in the ring, bring the audience in tighter, and it'll even be more of like whatever. Now, the reason why I'm saying not to go outside the ring, I just use a basketball reference, but you know, you can tell me, but how many times have you seen Steph Curry step outside the court and hit a 3-pointer and it counted on the board? How many times have you seen a wide receiver in football catch an amazing pass outside of the lines of the end zone and it counted as a touchdown? How many times have you seen, Connor McDavid make a great goal from standing up in the stands on his skates and it counted? The answer is you haven't seen it, because those things would automatically disqualify those points from going on the board, because you stepped outside the territory of which your playing field is. Like, boxers don't go outside the ring. UFC fighters don't go outside the cage. Even mat wrestlers don't go outside the ring, because that is a penalty point. Like, don't go outside the ring. It's really that simple. Like, if this is sports, and for all the people that are like, well, it's entertainment. It's sports entertainment. This has to exist in the world of sports. If sports is telling you that these points don't exist if you step out of bounds, then in sports entertainment, those same those same philosophies should apply. Like, this is not that difficult of a concept to grasp, and I understand that it limits doing things like jumping through the announce table and, oh my God, ladders, and it's like, who gives a shit? Stick to an in-ring product, less ladders and chairs and tables anyway. less of all the fluff, more in-ring content. And if you can't keep it in the ring and you can't have a good match in the ring, then you're honestly probably not a good wrestler. I'm going to leave it right there. My name is Keith Freeze. Thank you for checking out this video. Have a great one, everybody, and enjoy WWE.